flesh, but we don't war here. So even though it seems like everything is attacking your body, it might be an occasion where you do need healing. There's an occasion where an individual is getting on your nerves and they are pointing their finger in your physical face. You have to realize that the battle or the war isn't really going on there. As a matter of fact, you might be enduring a battle in your body or on the outside of you or in a particular situation. But we are given the understanding that the weapons of this war that we are in are not fleshly weapons. We can't just take up arms like we're in the army or in special forces and decide that we're going to engage in battle in that particular type of way. But the type of weapons that we have, they are not of the flesh, but it says that they are mighty through God through the pulling down of strongholds. So somewhere along the way, brick by brick and laying the mortar and putting a brick on top of it, somewhere there was a wall or a stronghold that was made in your life. And it could have been any host of reasons. It could have been even before you knew that there was even a war going on, or that you were cognizant of the type of struggle that you would have, that now there is this stronghold that has been built up. And now when you try to move a certain place or you try to walk forward, you find out there's a big wall, a big tower in front of me that I cannot surpass. And so what God is trying to tell you through this particular passage of scripture is this thing is not just your flesh. It wasn't just because it came down your family line. It wasn't just because mama had an attitude or mama struggled with this particular thing or this particular habit or this particular appetite. It wasn't because you were introduced to it early, but the introduction was no more than a brick to lead to a stronghold that is in your life. So when we get to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, it tells us that we are to first and foremost be strong.
Amen.
Be strong. So all your life, people have been telling you to be strong and you don't know what to be strong in. If I go to the gym and somebody says, well, I need you to be strong, you understand that there is a vehicle now wherein they are telling you to operate it. A lot of people have told you throughout your life to be strong, and you thought it just meant to be silent and not talk about what was going on in your life. And sometimes, somewhere along the way, you found out that if I ever testify about how I had to be dependent upon God, I will have a newfound strength. It says in the Word of God that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall walk and not faint. They shall run and not grow weary. So we understand now that there is something that we are supposed to be strong in. Strength does not come just for strength's sake. There is a reason and there is a position that I have to be in. So if I'm going to be strong at all, if I'm going to be strong as a man of God, as a woman of God, it says I have to be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. So much I've been trying to be mighty on my own. I've tried to will my way through this particular thing. And then when I fall short, now I get back into what I call my weakness, which is really the strength for me. Because my weakness has become so strong in my life that it is now the stronghold that was spoken of in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. So God tells us, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. And then it tells us that we have to put on specific armor. And when you put armor on, the whole purpose is that you are in a war zone. See, if we have ever gotten into the mind frame that this thing is just a fleshly fight, if we were in Iraq around Mosul or one of those places in Afghanistan where ISIS has a stronghold, we would understand that we were in a war zone because they'd be telling us to put on this particular breastplate so that you don't get hit by any bullets, and put your helmet on. And when you go out, you might need to get a little bit lower because you don't want to be an easy target. But what has happened is we've allowed ourselves to be easy targets because we forgot that there is a fight going on. You thought that the enemy likes you just because you were having a good old time with your buddies, and now that the tide is turning, you decide that you want to live for the Lord. Now there is a struggle. There is a fight, and you're getting hit by all types of shrapnel and different things because you were not aware that there was a fight going on. And we are not wrestling. We are not fighting against an adversary wherein we can see. It says that we put on this armor and we have to stand versus the tactics of this particular enemy. So we so many times have just sat down and first and foremost. And then the next thing we have to realize is that there are different tactics, because us sitting down was a part of the tactic. Us being comfortable was a part of the tactic that the enemy used in order to get the upper hand on us. When we kind of progress a little bit, we understand first and foremost that we are fighting. And with this particular fight, we have to understand that this enemy that we are fighting is a little bit more clever and smart than we thought he was. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, it said that the serpent was more subtle, meaning he was more cunning. He had discretion even when he was doing those things that were wrong. He had wisdom. He had understanding more than any other animal that was in the garden. So much so that he was outsmarted by the enemy and he is infiltrated. So now he is used as a mouthpiece, because it would have been illegal for Satan to be going around the garden as a spirit. So he needed a body to be housed in, so he chooses the serpent. As he chooses this particular serpent, he says, I'm going to choose it because of its qualities. Have you ever wondered why the struggle in your life has hit you the way that it has? Could it be that you have some talents that you don't even know about? And so because of that, in order to get at you in a certain way, what the enemy does is he sneaks in. He sneaks in your creature comforts. He sneaks into the things that make your flesh comfortable, that make your flesh feel good, that look good to your flesh, that feel good to your flesh, that sound good, that even taste good to your flesh. I've been telling people all week about there's this new thing going around, and it might not be all that new, but it's becoming more accessible to our young people, wherein they use a vehicle that they may be familiar with. It could be some fruit snacks, or it could be some gummy bears. And so it used to be that they would put the THC oil on it. That's the component that makes weed what it is. Now they're lacing it with heroin. So you have kids, they are taking this stuff in, and they're getting so jacked up, they're coming and finding us, the adults, and saying, have you heard about this stuff? Because I can't keep this to myself, because somebody's going to die.
That's right. That's right.
One gentleman came this week while we were on this fast, and he was telling me about how a child had come to him, and he said he was a little apprehensive because it wasn't one of your best children. It was one of your children that got suspended a lot. And he said, this guy came up to me and he said, have you heard about this stuff? And he said, heard about what? He says, somebody has been distributing this stuff. I have a video of myself on it, and I was high on it for 3 days.
Jesus.
So the enemy uses what makes you comfortable. So you're comfortable with being out of your mind and not facing your reality the way that you're supposed to. So he'll use a vehicle that you are familiar with. And he'll allow you to be intoxicated. And it's not just with alcohol or with drugs, but he'll allow you to be intoxicated with your emotions. Because you always got to feel it. You always have to feel a certain way. And then not only that, you want other people to be comfortable around you. You want them to feel good. And you want them to not judge you a certain type of way. And you don't want them to think that you've changed because you are going through this particular thing. So now in Matthew chapter 12, verse 29, what God says is that if you are going to go into a strong man's house and begin to take over what he has, you have to first bind the strong man. Y'all know about strong men because you remember in Judges chapter 16, there was a man by the name of Samson, and nothing could bind him. As a matter of fact, he had a vice with a lady whose lap he would always put his head in. And one day she said, if you love me, you would tell me what it is that gives you your strength. And so he tells her a couple lies and everything else because he just wants to lay his head in her lap. And so after 2 times when he is telling her these things that are falsehoods, she knows how to manipulate him.
Yes.
And he says, this is where my strength lies. If you cut all my hair off, I'll be just like any other man. So you see a strong man being bound up. And he was bound up even before he was physically bound. Some of us think because we are able to matriculate through life with all of the different changes that go on around us, that we are okay. But before there is a physical binding, there is always something emotional. There is always something in your mind that is binding you up. So right now it might be that you feel that you're free, but your mind won't let you go. Your emotions won't let you go. You are constantly dealing with this particular thing. This thing is a demon in your life because just when you think that you are free from it, it keeps gripping you and it keeps trying to tell what you can get. Amen. So it says you bind the strong man before you can have the spoil from the fight. This fight in David's life shows us about us. You experience setbacks. You experience discontent. You experience failings and battles because of a couple of things that I want to share with you this morning, and then we'll get into the text. First and foremost, you experience all of these things because you are unique as an individual. There are 7 billion people on this earth, and there is only one person that is like you. There are 46 chromosomes that make up your DNA.
Yeah.
And this DNA is a code that basically tells us everything about you, from how far apart your eyes are going to be, what color the iris of your eyes are going to be, and how your ears are going to look, and if you're going to have a unibrow or not, or whether or not you're going to have full lips or thin lips or sideways lips or whatever. But we understand that these chromosomes, they are thread-like, as if someone sewed them together.
Yeah.
Just follow me for just a little bit. Like I said, I'll come back if you blink at me crazy. So it says in Psalm 139, verses 13 through 15, as we read through this particular text, it gets to a point where David makes a statement. He says, you know what? Nothing was hid from you, as I was curiously wrought in my mother's womb, meaning I was uniquely stitched together. So I understand now that I am a designer's original. In those 46 chromosomes and that DNA, when I came together in my mother's womb and I was stitched together based on this particular code, 100 trillion cells came together. In just one of those cells, there is enough information for 4,000 books. If my DNA is unraveled, it would stretch 7 feet out in front of me on a microscopic level. The info would go to the moon and back. There would be hundreds of thousands it would go to the moon and back hundreds and thousands of times, and it could also fill the Grand Canyon at least 500 times. This is the uniqueness of who I am. David, once again, he begins to write in Psalm chapter 8, verse 3. He says, I consider the heavens, and I consider the moon, and I consider the stars. And so the only things that he could see, because he didn't have the luxury that we have of telescopes and microscopes, and he couldn't look at the microscopic level, and he couldn't look at the astronomical levels of what we have, but he is in awe of the wonders of creation. So when he's talking about stars, he is ultimately talking about planets as well. So in the wonder of creation, and this is what science now will tell you, is that all of a sudden everything just banged, and everything you see came together, and all this order just started to come forth. And now you have this complex machine you call a body, with all of its vices and all of its issues and everything else, and it just came together. And this is what the enemy wants to tell you, is that all you are is just a body of nerves and just a bunch of impulses. So if you do a particular thing, it's okay, because you're just dancing to the DNA that is within your system.
Come on now.
But what David begins to tell us is that in this wonder of creation, even astronomical science has to come to the point where they realize, you know what, everything about this world and this universe, it came from a singular point that everything is expanding out of. This concept of evolution and this Big Bang is flawed because of simple physical laws. When we look at, for instance, some children at a merry-go-round at a park. I know they don't have merry-go-rounds anymore, because I know when I was a little boy, we used to jack each other up on it, because you would spin it as hard as it could go, and then kids would go flying off of it, and now they have to have all this soft stuff they can land on. It wasn't any of that back in the day. You hit the hard dirt, you scraped your knees up. But I remember, if you started to spin this merry-go-round a certain way, and kids started to fly off of it, once they got off the merry-go-round, because of momentum, they would continue to move that way. So if I'm moving this way and I get off of something, I'm going to continue to spin that way. Let's look at these planets, because if that was true, and if everything came from a Big Bang, and that's what it was, and there was no creation or creator to be behind creation, that means all of the planets should turn the same way. But as we look at the planets, we see that there is one planet by the name of Venus that turns the opposite way, as if in opposition to every other planet. So it turns in an opposite direction in order to go through its orbit. And so when we start looking at this, it makes us say, that's interesting. Maybe something happened to it. So you had a gentleman by the name of Johann Kepler, and he says, well, there's an explanation for that, and so he explains it away. So God in his wisdom did something else. He makes another planet by the name of Uranus. I'm not going to say the other one that y'all usually call it. But with Uranus, what he does is he says, well, since you think you can explain that away, and this is years before Kepler even came about, because it was in the beginning, he makes Uranus, and Uranus is spinning on a 90-degree orbit. So now it is spinning straight up and down. So whereas there is another one that is spinning the opposite way, this one spins straight up and down. And so you cannot deny that somebody has flicked it with their cosmic finger and caused it to go a particular way. So what does David say about this? He says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. So if you ever have any doubt about what it is that God is doing, it says that through the declaration of nature, we begin to see that God ultimately is in control. All of earth consists of a series of building blocks that we call atoms. And with these atoms, they are based on a weight or an attraction to the earth that keep you held together. Now scientists are trying to find out with these floating things called atoms that make up everything from our skin to the pew that you're sitting on, how is it and why is it that they don't just fall apart? What is keeping these things together? Scientists can't explain what holds atoms together on a subatomic level. They can name different stuff, but when they get to the point where they can't name anything anymore and they try to explain away what exactly it is, we have to go to the scripture, and we see in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3, where it says, all things are upheld by the word of his power. So all of these electrons, protons, and neutrons that are encased in an atom are held by a word. Then the word was let there be, and there was, from Genesis chapter 1. David finishes this thing on the uniqueness of mankind, and he says in Psalm chapter 8, verse 4, what is man that you are mindful of him? Remember, there are 7 billion people. There is only one you with DNA coded from 2 distinct parents into 46 chromosomes that is so precise. It has the parameters of the width between your eyes, the nature of your earlobe, your height, your width, the width of your nose, and all this is stitched together. The next thing that the enemy is attacking that you don't even realize is the fact that you are complex. You are complex. Some of us would say, well, yeah, I'm a little crazy. No, that's not what I'm talking about right now. We'll talk about you being crazy next week. But right now, I need to let you know that you are complex. I recall, I like classical music because sometimes I just don't want to hear people talk, even if it's worship music or whatever else. That's just me. But I listened to a gentleman by the name of Mozart. Mozart was a prodigy. He composed his first song when he was 3. You've probably sang it before. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. He composed operas, and he composed adagios and different things that I can't even spell and explain because I'm not a musician. But there was an occasion when he was but a youth, and his father took him to another city to listen to a composition. And it was a long play or a long drama or opera. And so he sits and he is enthralled while this whole musical showcase is going on. And as it is being played note by note, his ear is picking up the symphony. And it's picking up the distinct tones, and it's picking up a particular note here and a particular note there. So now when he finally gets back home, which was it was a pretty significant journey. It would be like going from here to another state. And so he gets home and he sits down at his piano and he is able to redo the composition. Now, we understand because he is a prodigy and he is a genius that happens, but what happens when you have somebody that the world says, well, this person is autistic, there is no reason for them to be able to do this. The same thing occurs with this gentleman who was what is called a autistic savant. And there was a 45-minute composition that he is privy to listen to. And as he listens to it, he sits there blankly, listening to every note, listening to every chord. And so when everything is over, he gets to the piano and for 45 minutes straight does not miss a note of this particular song that he has just heard. You are complex. There is nothing that can discount or nullify your complexity. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12, it tells us that there are many members, but there is one body. We are one body of believers, and we understand that the body is many in the 14th verse. And in the 15th verse, we need to understand that no one can or should discount what they are. And Paul gives some examples of the different members of the body, and they are the members that are on you. You have a foot, you have a hand, you have an eye, and you have an ear. You have a foot, a hand, an eye, and an ear. So it just wouldn't be a Pastor Pryor message if I didn't look and see what was so significant about each one of these different things. Now with your foot has 1/4 of all the bones in your body contained within it. He has made your foot to be durable, and the way that the foot is made, it cannot be discounted because it is not another part of the body. This foot is unique because it houses 26 bones. The hand has the fingerprints, and it IDs you. It IDs who you are, and then also God has made it to where that fingerprints, it can never tan. You can go out and it could be 100 degrees in the Sahara, and it would never change a shade. But when you flip the script, the other side of your hand can tan. So you see all of these different things that God is doing to make unique. And also, we have to realize that your hand is actually more sensitive than your eye when it comes to getting information.
Come on now.
So many times you're wondering why you're always trying to touch stuff. You know, it's not good enough just for you to see it, and that's gotten you into a lot of trouble. And then also you're around people that want to touch you all the time. They can't just look and enjoy it. They got to touch it. So they're telling you stuff, and they're trying to get at all of your other senses. Or they want you to smell what they got on. They want to cook for you, and they're trying to get you to smell what they're cooking and then taste it and everything else. And they are attaining you because if they can ever get you to touch, that is going to be a whole lot stronger than them just allowing you to just see something. Or them being allowed to just see something. So sometimes you have to set your limits and say, no, you got to be like Jesus. Don't touch me right now, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. I'm not yet what He has called me to be. Plus, you ain't putting no ring on this finger right here. And so you got to understand how God created you. So the next thing is the eye. Your eyeballs actually have a DNA imprint. Your iris has more of a DNA imprint and is more specific than your ID from your fingerprint. So many times you see a lot of people are doing retinal scans to identify people because that is more significant in terms of identification than anything else. Your eyeballs in their sockets stay the same size from the time you were born until the time you die.
Come on now.
And the last thing is that there are over 2 million working parts to the eye.
Jesus.
The last thing is the ear. 80% of your memory, 80% of your learning comes from the things that you hear. Are you seeing what the enemy has been trying to do with you now? This is why it says that faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. If I could just get in that 80%, the 20% that's when it starts to get a little bit harder. I have to be mindful of what I'm allowing to come into my hearing, because now I'm going to start remembering. I was telling somebody some time ago that when I was in the 8th grade, there was a woman by the name of Miss Berner. She was my Algebra 1 teacher at Halverson Middle School. Turner Middle School. And there was an occasion where I was nominated to go on a leadership conference. And I had to go around to my teachers, and I had my little paper, and I was so happy and proud, and all my teachers, they were saying, oh, congratulations, Eric. And I was just happy, and I marched on up to Miss Berner's desk, and she sat there, and I remember she had a red jacket on just like Mother. Now, this is the 8th grade. I don't remember too much else of my childhood. But I went and I gave her the paper, and I said, I need you to sign this, Miss Berner, because I'm going to the leadership conference. And she turned to me and she said, leadership? Leader? You're no leader. After all of these years,
Come on now.
because of something she said, I still remember it. If God had not indwelt my life early, I would have allowed that to taint my life. Some of us have allowed something to taint our life, and in the same way, I can even explain to you the way her breath smells. That's how impactful impactful the memory is. If you ever smell something, you remember it forever.
Yes, you will.
Some of us have gone through experiences, and I'm not trying to dredge up too much stuff, but you still remember the smell of that sin, the smell of the thing that happened to you. As long with the things that were said to you. People doing stuff and then saying that they're sorry. People touching and imposing on your childhood and on your innocence and then telling you, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to do this and everything else. Sometimes I'm just tripping. No, it's not about that because I'm still dealing with this particular thing.
Come on now, you better tell it.
We can't, we're trying to have a rated G gospel. I like the way that the bishop says it. It's always rated G. We always have a Disney depiction of what the gospel is supposed to be. But y'all are going through some stuff. I'm going through some stuff.
Come on now, come on.
And there is no time for us to sit here playing, acting like I can just quote a couple scriptures and then everything is going to be okay. No, you got to live this word. You got to live this word. That's why that fast last week was so important, because a lot of us, we've been so busy just talking scriptures, and then when it comes up that there's a Bible conversation, we look knowledgeable because Elder Pryor has been telling us about the planets, and he told us about Jupiter one week, and now he's telling us about Venus and Uranus, and so now I feel smart and whatever else, and I can hang in this conversation. But then you go through something, and you're going through just like everybody else. And people are saying, well, what good is your pastor? And then better yet, what good is your Jesus if you don't have the Holy Ghost that's living, moving, and acting on the inside of you? So the last thing that I want to share with you on this introduction is your fight is as unique and complex as you are. A fight requires that there is something worth your attention. Now, we are all built and we are all stitched together differently. So there are certain appetites that are raging on the inside of us. There are certain things that we like. There are certain things that we don't like. You notice this if you got kids at the house. I got one kid at the house, he won't eat macaroni and cheese. I got another kid, he won't eat nothing that has noodles in it. I have one particular child, he doesn't like a certain type of juice. And this other child, he likes it. And then, so you have all of these different changes based off of appetite. You are unique, but there are some things that you know right now that have your attention.
Come on now, come on now.
Stealing isn't a draw for me. Throw a chocolate cake in the mix now, I might have a problem.
Come on.
Or you have some people where their appetite is for something that is sexual. Some people, they're going after money. Some people are going after a drug. Some people have their particular appetite that is being baited. And you have to understand this thing is unique and as complex as I am. Because who would know that I like this in this particular type of way? Have you noticed that the type of people that try to draw you,
Come on now.
they got a certain look to them.
That's right, that's
And you can't get them out of your spirit. They talk a certain way. They sound a certain way. They know just the right thing to say to hook you in.
Come on
And you
now.
remember everything about it. Even the things that you didn't want to happen to you, because I got to address that just for a little bit. The things that you didn't want to happen to you, as much as you didn't want that to happen to you, there's still some residue behind. You might have changed up the way that you function in terms of a lifestyle. You might have said, I will never ever in my life allow anybody to do something like this to me again.
Come on
So
now.
what I'm going to do is I'm never going to forgive that person, and I'm going to put a wall up.
Oh, Jesus.
So all of these things, the enemy, he was able to come in, and there was now a stronghold, and he is able to bind you up with it. Because you are constantly being plagued with the choice of to just let it go and be dependent on me, says the Lord, or what the devil says. No, you don't need that in your life. You need to be strong. Remember, that's how we started this thing off. You have to be strong.
Yeah.
You have to show that you're independent and you don't need God in this particular
Come on
thing.
now, come on now.
So it is something that is worth your attention. In James chapter 1, I believe it's around the 13th verse, it says, all men are tempted when they are drawn away of their own lusts, their own illicit desire, and they are enticed when there is a type of bait that comes out. And that bait, it lures, that's how the fishermen talk about it. They have a certain lure, and it dances a certain way for the fish. And the fish is saying, hold up, wait, is that what I think it is? And it's looking. And the thing is, when the fish finally grabs hold of it, it's not even a real worm. It's not even a real insect.
That's right.
It's something plastic. But by the time I realize that it's not something that I can eat, it's already in my mouth and I've been hooked by this particular thing. So the sin that we have, by the time we get to the point where we can submit to the reward has ensnared us.
Come on now.
So it is something worth your attention. Then there is a willingness to engage. This is what makes it a fight, because first and foremost, it grabbed my attention.
Yes.
Now it is saying, you know what? You're going to have to fight me
Come on
if
now.
you want me to
Come on.
let go.
Yes, Lord. Preach that.
And then the last thing that this fight that you have, that it requires, is that there has to be something that is a worthy pride.
Come on now.
It's your deliverance
Jesus.
worth the struggle. It's your deliverance worth the fight. Remember, when David gets into this situation, one of the things that he asks, he says, wow, look at all these people that are here. Nobody's stepping up to the challenge. Is the prize worthy enough? What do you get if you fight this Philistine? And they said, oh man, you get it going on. You win the lottery. You get Saul's daughter. You get to sit at the royal table. You get your own apartment up at the castle. You got it going on. He said, that's it. And all you got to do is fight this giant. And he said, yeah. And so his brother begins to get mad at him. I'm not going to get too far into the message, but his brother gets upset with him. And he says, you are always filled with pride and naughtiness. You are always doing stuff. And see, your confidence to a lot of people is looking like pride. Because they don't want to go after the same things that you're going after because they're too scared. But I digress from that.
Come on now.
David has all three of these in Goliath's challenge, because Goliath has been out there for 40 days and nobody has taken him up on his challenge. So you are in the midst of a perfect opportunity, but there is a fight that is involved.
Yes.
You don't want to succumb to what it is that has come as of this point. You've been struggling, you've been fighting, but now I need you to know that this thing was worth your attention first off, that you engaged it, and now there is a worthy prize. So let's talk just for a little bit, because David has a unique resume. David is fighting because, I think I set it up last time. You have in this corner, you have the giant, the champion of Gath, by the name of Goliath. Goliath he's a worshiper of the god Dagon, which is a fish god, which is a fertility god. And he ultimately worships this deity, and he is 9 foot 9 inches tall. He has killed many men in battle. He has armor that weighs almost 200 pounds. He has a helmet that is just as heavy as he is, just about. And the tip of his spear weighs 20 pounds.
Come on now.
And his shield is so heavy, he just has somebody carry that for him. So the guy's struggling, and you will hear about him a little bit later in the fight. On the other side, we have David. Now, I don't have too much information on this boy named David, just like people don't have too much information about you right now, because your biggest fight maybe has not come to an end, and it has not commenced the rest of your life. But David has a very unique resume, because he's been in some other fights, but the problem is he hasn't fought other men.
Come on now.
So this is the reason why people don't know about David. This is the reason why people don't know about you, because they don't know what you've had to struggle with and defeat. So while everybody else is struggling with men and struggling with trying to cut deals and everything else, you got beasts that you've been up against and demons that you've been fighting at night, and you've been having dreams about, and you've been casting out in back rooms and places, and even within yourself, so you can get free. And so now David's resume includes protecting sheep. So first and foremost, he has a mind to protect other animals that aren't even on his level. How many people have you protected that aren't even on your level? And you are protecting them just because of what God had put on the inside of you.
Come on now.
It says that he fought a lion and he killed it. We'll talk more about that at the 6 o'clock news hour.
Well.
It says that he fought a bear and he killed it.
Come on now.
And his weapons of choice include staves, a sling, and stones for weapons.
Come on now.
But we are also noticing this just in is that you have been fighting without a sword. So everything that you've done up to this point, you have been missing a sword.
Yes.
So his situation, this David, your situation, you are a David and you don't even know it, is that you are unique and complex. You are unique and complex. As we look at his situation, first and foremost, he's not old enough for war.
Jesus.
When the battle started in your life, you weren't even old enough many times to contemplate what was going on in your life.
True.
You were in kindergarten and kids were picking on you.
Come on now.
You were 8 years old and somebody touched you the wrong way.
Come on now.
You were 13 and in the 8th grade and some teacher said something about you. That's me. I'm sorry. That was for me.
Well.
But you weren't old enough to engage in battle. So what you did was something that you continue to do past that time. You allowed your flesh to try to war against it, and then you wondered why you weren't effective.
Come on now. Come on now.
So he is not old enough for war, and he is literally not old enough to be even conscripted into the army, meaning he could not enlist into the army to fight for Israel.
That's right.
You had to be 20. This is why he is taking care of the sheep. And his father says, go and take these sheep and go see about your brothers, see how they're doing. Now, a couple other things that are going on in David's life is that he has been anointed by Samuel to be the next king.
Jesus.
So you know that there is something special about your life. You have been touched and have been set apart for something. There are 7 other brothers in your house, David, and God chooses you above everybody else. Why are you dealing with the thing that you're dealing with?
Come on now.
Why do you have to deal with it? Why are you having to struggle with it? I think about a young lady, and she may never hear this sermon. I know that the only thing I know about her now is that she is in prison. But her story is this. When she was young, she had 2 other brothers. The brothers are okay. One brother, I believe, is going to law school, and he talks about this young lady from time to time. But when she was young, her mother was addicted to drugs. She was addicted to crack.
Come on now. Come on.
And in order for her to have her fix, she would prostitute her little girl.
Come on now.
So when the girl gets older, she says, I will never have another man touch me. And so she decides to live a certain type of way. And because she decides to live a certain type of way, she hardens herself. She becomes so hard that she now is running with the wrong crowd. As she is running with this wrong crowd, she gets caught up.
Come on now.
And she ends up serving a prison sentence. She's currently serving this particular prison sentence. But we don't understand why, out of everybody else, I have 2 other brothers. Why is it that whoever was doing this or wanted that particular thing supplied, why was I on the menu?
Jesus.
And the thing we have to understand here is that he is anointed by Samuel. I'm always intrigued with the fact that Jesse never said, oh, wait, let's wait on David. No, he puts all the 7 brothers up. Now, you would think he would put the top 3 up. I could understand if he just put the 3 brothers up there, and they were already at the house. And he said, you know, these 3 are my top 3 oldest sons. So I know if God is going to choose anybody, he's going to choose them. I've put everything into them. They know how to run my family business. They're fighters. They're conscripted into the army. They've trained and they've done all of these different things for Saul. So surely these 3 would be it.
Yes.
But it says that there are 7 men in the house. And Samuel passes over each and every one of them. And never once does Jesse say, oh, go run and get David. As a matter of fact, Samuel has to go and say, I know I'm anointed to be here today. I have an assignment for this house today. The problem is that these sons are not it. Do you have any other sons?
Jesus.
If Samuel would not have asked, they would have never gotten David. So you have to ask the question, what is it about David
Come on now.
that he is overlooked?
Yeah.
And if you look all throughout David's life, it seems like he's trying to fulfill a void. You're the king of Israel. You have your choice of the women. You have your choice of, you have all types of gold and silver. You have anything you could ever want. Why are you going after another man's wife, David? Why are you trying to